welcome to Synthetic Intelligence Forum Online. My name is Vic. I'm the founder and the host of the Synthetic Intelligence Forum. And I'm very happy to welcome you to a conversation with thought leaders, with domain specialists, with industry professionals and my friends who are going to talk about AI governance, specifically keys to successful AI governance. This is a very important topic as organizations, enterprises, governments, universities, private sector, startups alike embrace and adopt AI in a very ambitious and bold way. There are concerns around AI ethics, AI fairness, interpretability in AI, AI governance, more broadly speaking, a responsible AI, beneficial AI. And so to that reason, we wanted to bring together experts from around the world to share their varied backgrounds and their varied experiences. I'm going to welcome them one by one to the stream. Very happy to be joined by Leila and Anna and Annette, who've kindly taken time from their busy schedules to join us. So before we go into the presentation, before we go into the panel discussion question by question, I would like to start by just asking our esteemed panelists to maybe tell us a little bit about their professional background and their role and how it is that their role makes them work with AI governance, responsible AI on a day-to-day basis, whether at a strategic level, tactical level, or operational level. So Leila, with that, I'd like to pass the mic to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your role and how it relates to AI governance?
Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Vic, for having me today here. Thank you for invitation. My name is Leila Seyedzadeh. I'm Head of Exploration for United Nations Development Program, Accelerator Lab, Azerbaijan. So let me first dive a little bit into my role and this Accelerator Lab initiative of UNDP to get an understanding of what we are doing and better context for the next questions. So basically, Accelerator Lab was to make it very clear from the first minutes, UNDP is very much into innovation and new technologies like artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things, and etc. So we strongly believe that innovation can play a significant role in social impact and in achieving social good. So UNDP, following all changes we observe in the world, have launched its new innovative initiative called Accelerator Lab. It was launched first in 60 countries and now it was expanded to 90 countries. So Accelerator Lab is the innovative leg of UNDP and is the fastest, biggest growing learning network across the world. What we do there, we conduct small experiments using new technologies that I mentioned and beyond, of course, to understand how well we can inject innovations into ongoing UNDP programs. And considering the fact that UNDP is closely working, of course, with government in all the countries, we try to accelerate the process of injecting these innovations into the projects delivered by UNDP in cooperation with governments across the world. So AI governance is the hot topic now for our organization, and we work in this direction in many countries, including Azerbaijan. For instance, I am the member of Artificial Intelligence Strategy Development Committee for next 5 years in Azerbaijan. And the good thing about it is that there is not only government and international organizations, but also a private sector who responds actually usually the first to some events and some happenings in the world. So this also adds agility to the development of hands-on AI strategy, let's say. So, and this is not applicable only for Azerbaijan, but this is like my involvement is one of the main examples of UNDP's involvement into the development of innovation strategies as well as AI strategies. So
thank you.
This is an intro, I would say.
Thank you, Leila. That's very informative. I think that will help our audience to understand the context to your answers. Thank you. Annette, I'd like to ask the same question to you. So please introduce your role and how it relates to AI governance.
Yeah, first, Rick, thanks for having me here today, and I'm so happy to join this call today. So my name is Annettes, and I work at the Estonia Briefing Center as one of the digital transformation advisors. And as you might already know, Estonia is today one of the most well-known countries when it comes to digitalization. And by today, we have around 99% of the services already, governmental services, working fully online. But of course, AI has become even more important topic now in the recent years, so that we would like to take our services even on a higher level and provide our people a very great customer experience, and that's why AI is meant for. So what I do in my role is that I help the other governments, I consult the other governments who come to Estonia and want to learn from us, like how did the process look like here, and what we have been up to here, and especially right now, again, as I brought it up before, AI is becoming more and more essential question on the table. So I try to introduce the Estonian AI strategy, which was implemented in the year 2019, and just to support other countries in their process of also implementing AI technology on the governmental level. And of course, also we can bring out a couple of examples from the private sector level as well. And I'm so grateful to see also that the European Union is taking AI topic more and more importantly on also in their strategies. So there is a couple of already very great frameworks for the use of AI, somehow also the regulation part, but we can talk about this a little bit more in details when it comes to risk of using AI. But I feel that Europe really should be the way that is leading the way in a way, and yeah, so we try to support the other countries with their process as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Annette. That also helps us to set context for what's to come. And Anna, the same question to you.
Sure. First of all, also thank you very much for having me here. I'm happy to be participating in this panel. So very briefly about myself, I'm running two things. First is the consulting company that I have launched a couple of months ago. Before that, I was an independent consultant for AI governance, AI policy, and ethics. Before that, I was working for before consulting companies. And last summer, I have also launched a nonprofit organization, AI Governance International. So basically, I'm based in Germany, but in pandemic, it's pretty hard to determine where you're based because I'm also working for international organizations, clients. And also, I contribute with many organizations, like either voluntary level, like for example, IEEE or for Humanity on the standards development, and also speak on international conferences and also as a guest lecturer to some universities. My major area is I have a social science background, so I explore artificial intelligence from exactly social sciences, political power play, and also economical implications. And I also explore neuroscience and data science on technical level to better understand how AI really works. So I'm happy to today discuss the AI governance and best practices for organizations.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. So as we go to the first question, Annette, I'd like to come to you first. I found it interesting, as you mentioned, in your current role as a digital transformation advisor, you actually take the best practices from Estonia and you share them, which certainly Estonia, I agree, is world recognized as the exemplary international example, basically, for digital transformation success. So and you mentioned that you work with other governments to sort of share that knowledge and to help them advance in their journeys. So can you start by telling us a little bit about what does success look like when it comes to AI governance?
Yeah, thanks for a good question. And definitely what I would say for the beginning is that if I would have to just answer this question in one single sentence, I would say that the success looks when private sector, academia, and public sector are collaborating in developing AI use cases. So that would be the most important. But if I would go more into the details here, so the goal for us, if we will think about like the success story, it would be to have the actions in implementing AI in public sector and bring really, as I said in the beginning as well, these services to the next level. And I mean really, because what AI is meant for is to help our citizens, or if we talk about the private sector, their customers, to really enjoy this kind of communication, either with it's between the state and the citizens, or the customers and the service provider, and really to start using more and more AI cases, which also can bring us some kind of like financial creation of the AI aspect as well. And I would say that AI would help us to also create new silos between the government agencies and information systems. By using AI, we can solve the problems of taking the digital public services to the best possible user experience, but also we are using it, working on providing a virtual assistant who would guide us to the customer, to the different kind of governmental institutions and platforms. But when I would just think about this for a second as well, I guess when we think about the success story there, then it would really have to give success to both the customers and then also the government institutions. And what I mean is that we spend way too much time on still doing very manual things, even if things are done on a technical level, used by different kind of governmental services and platforms, but we can automate them, and this is what the AI is meant for, so that if the citizen is using services, that they would feel that this was something invisible happening on a background, and we can really make these things working automatically. And by the government aspect or the public institutions aspect, then once again, we can analyze the data by using AI much more easier, and I mean, people who work in public sector can now focus on different aspects there. So we established already our AI strategy in 2019 by keeping these things in mind, that we always have to work together with private sector, include academia there, and to see what's the latest innovation happening. And the strategy is right now to sum up with actions that the Estonian government will take in advance to take up the AI, both in public and private sector, to increase, of course, also the relevant skills and research and development side as well. Because I think it's also, when we think about the success story, then we can't leave behind the skills and just like the public awareness of use of AI. But again, we have a lot of time later to go more in details with this, because I still feel that there is not a clear understanding from the society side what is AI, and that's why we also need to address these issues as well. So definitely, if there is a public awareness, and if public sector, private sector, and the academia are working together, that's where you can really have success stories by using the AI technology. And I would say the government has to be just the one that is pushing these things also to happen, by including the latest innovation to into use, and of course also supporting the private companies. And I'm so happy to see that just in last year we replaced 50 public services by AI use cases already, and we're also continuously financing the private companies who are using AI solutions by providing their customers different kind of services.
Thank you, Annette, for sharing a very comprehensive view of AI governance in the entire journey from government operations to citizen and Estonians' experiences. Leila, I'd like to come to you with the same question. I know in your introduction you talked about you're leading the digital accelerator for UNDP. You're based in Azerbaijan, but in fact, a lot of the lessons you're learning are shared now across the entire UNDP family on a global basis. So when you deal with your own sort of accelerator, and you work with other organizations in the UNDP family, what does success look like when it comes to designing and implementing AI governance?
Thank you, Vic, for the question. Actually, that was great to have to listen to Annette, because we use Estonian user cases a lot, and Estonia is best practices actually. So yes, this learning sharing experience works really great across the countries. As for us, Accelerator Lab, let me first start with the fact that in Accelerator Lab, actually, we are 3 people, which is very important, because it's not like the one person leading Accelerator Lab, but it's 3 people studying and trying to understand what could be the best solutions in terms of innovation for the particular society. And what we do actually in as Accelerator Lab for the success of implementation of any innovative activities, including AI as well, is we study first the needs of the real group of people or real situation, and then we try to understand if there are any local solutions based on, let's say in our case, on AI. And then we start scaling, accelerating actually these local solutions, because when something is comes naturally from this, we call it solution mapping. So when something comes from the current environment, has more chances to be sustainable, because people acquire this faster than something brought from any different situations. So basically, this understanding of using local context is very important, and this is what we do in Accelerator Lab. So we harvest this local experiments, and then we share this across labs, trying to understand whether it fits to other lab situation or not. And so this is the key to success, actually. And what I want to mention here as well, when we are talking about the successful implementation, is as UNDP, of course, we are focused on the social impact and all this social aspects of AI governance. And here, gender sensitivity comes to the forefront, because we need to consider, especially with AI, we need to consider all gender biases, stigmas when we are developing something, when we are doing machine learning, when we are working with AI. So this is another big work which is done by UNDP, and we have separate program for this, like Women in STEM, trying to bring more women in technology, so that it's also impacted on AI as well. So the more women we have, less stigmas and biases we have within while implementing and while introducing AI strategies and practices.
Thank you, Leila. So that's very interesting to hear that you're taking a socio-technical lens to AI governance rather than a purely technical lens to AI, and you're considering things like equity, diversity, inclusivity in your governance plan as well. That's very exciting. Anna, I'd like to ask you the same question, because you have set up the Nonprofit Research Institute, and then you've also been a consultant for quite some time internationally, providing thought leadership on these areas. So what are you hearing when you talk to your clients, or when you talk to your fellow researchers collectively? What does the concept of AI governance look like in a successful context?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so so far, basically just agreeing all of the above that, what already has been discussed by other 2 panelists. From my side, I can emphasize on the importance of engaging, first of all, multi-stakeholder approach, and second of all, there is also multidisciplinary approach. For me, it is very important when I talk to the companies. It is very important to make sure that there are some other people in the team outside of the data scientists or machine learning developers, whether it is the someone from social science background, or even philosophy, or even psychology, in order to make it more clear for the team what are socio-technical implications that you have mentioned in for the specific technology, AI technology solution. And there is also this specific stages. I was just working actually on AI governance framework under my consulting. So far, I was consulting companies like in general, but it didn't have the asset framework phase or structure, and I will just publish it very soon on the website as well. But basically, the major advice is usually to also discuss at the stages of the working on a project, and that is like before a pre-design stage, where you have to consider those different risk scenarios and whether you should it all work on the project or not, and whether you should just finish the project and not start at all. Then you have the design and development stage, and then you also have the deployment stage where you have to check and have control mechanism in place, for example, yearly or every 5 years or every 10 years, whatever is the requirement for the specific product. There is not only one answer to that. I think it has to have a very comprehensive approach, very comprehensive governance framework, first of all, the theoretical thing, and then it should be followed by the different tools and implementation mechanism in place. So I think you should have some ethical principles in place, first of all, and then you should have other methodologies, structural or relational, or other methodologies to work on organizational level, internal governance, external governance, and also how to talk to third-party providers when you need them. I think that's what makes a successful governance, to look at every step of your project development when you work on specific technology, case-by-case examples.
Okay, thank you, Anna. That's quite helpful to take, again, just to extend that metaphor on the socio-technical side. So, Leila, for the next question, I'd like to start with you first. So, everybody talked a little bit about what AI governance looks like. Now, let's dive a little bit deeper. And now, let's say, okay, if we know what AI governance success looks like, what are the building blocks? Let's dive a little bit deeper into what are those factors? What are those drivers? So, Leila, in your experience, how would you say, what are those factors that lead to successful AI governance?
Thank you, Vic, for your question. So when we are talking about success criteria, we need to go a little bit to do a step back and think about the foundation and the homework to be done before. So before we start any initiative. So basically, we at UNDP, when we do AI, when we implement AI-based projects, it's important to understand the key needs and the beneficiaries of potential AI strategies, projects, and etc. So first of all, understanding the groups and beneficiaries is important. Second, we need to understand whether we really need AI here, or we can do something else, something different. Then it's very important to dive into the ethical side of AI, because as I said, with AI, we start with collecting data, storing this data, processing it. It's all about gender-sensitive and biased data processing and outputs. And it's about data security. And not especially, I think it's important for all aspects, for all fields. But when we work on this, we usually implement these projects in cooperation with government. So basically, it's health, infrastructure, SMEs. So it's very important to understand the security, cybersecurity issues, and in terms of the implementation of the projects. And this is actually how we approach this. And also another thing, actually, which we saw, we observed in the result of pandemic outbreak, is that this is the world of, this is an unpredictable world, and we need to be really flexible and agile to be successful. And this is the big step change, actually, that we did, and the big insight of this last year. So we actually, for ourselves, when we were working on the strategy, we realized that there is no long-term planning and long-term strategies for innovation. Of course, there are some overarching ideas and goals which need to be achieved, but overall, we realized that being flexible and agile is a key to success, because everything changes really fast, and it's important to follow the pace of real happenings, real world.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Leila. So, Anna, the same question for you is you talked about what success looks like. Now, can you comment also on what the factors are or how you would measure success? What are the key drivers of successful AI governance?
Sorry. Yeah. First of all, what I usually emphasize is that the metrics are very important, but at the same time, I believe that we do not have enough understanding or enough tools to have already metrics in place. So that's why I have also mentioned previously that case-by-case approach in this stage of AI development is very important. So the very first factor is that to kind of follow step-by-step development and look at gradually observe the development stages, and after the case-by-case understanding of AI and what are its implications for the society, broader implications for political arrangement, power play, and so on, then we can already work on metrics development. Because the metrics is a very tricky thing. Sometimes most of the people think that metrics is something that we cannot really have in place when it comes to fairness or bias or ethical principles, because that differs very much across the societies, countries, and regions. But the major answer is that we somehow need to come up with the universal understanding or metrics when it comes to AI, because the technologies are becoming really global, and no matter in which country it is developed, it spreads across the world, and we have seen a lot of examples of that already. So it doesn't matter which country it is, it has to somehow, the universal answers and universal metrics has to somehow reach to all the countries where they would have it as a guidance. So this is one of the major features, like to observe gradually, like yearly development of how it really happens, and then to follow through with some specific answers or measure scenarios.
Okay, thank you, Anna. And Annette, I'd like to ask you the same question. In your professional opinion, what are the factors that drive the success of AI governance?
First of all, again, I fully agree with Dana and Leila as well on their points as well. And we really need this kind of, I would say, the same approach in a way when it comes to the ethical side there. But our, like, how do we do that in Estonia here, and what are the most essential things to guarantee the success is that we have tried to place this, the implementation of AI into on like 4 different pillars, and this means boosting AI in the government, AI in economy, skills among the research and development, and then the legal environment, which I definitely wanted to bring it out here, because when we think about the legal environment, many countries are currently struggling that they are happy and ready to start using the AI. There is technology there, but again, when we think about regulations on the state sector, it's not there yet, and it takes time. And definitely also, as we all know, technology is changing all the time, improving all the time. And then when you have your legal backgrounds ready, and of course right now, I mean, when we think about our society, the conversations regarding the ethics of AI are very actual, and then already this technology might be over if you use that. So definitely also to have this kind of common approach, but we also have to think through everything. How do we collect the data? How do we share the data? How security is, and so on. Like, I mean, when we do these things, we have to understand about in a way that we still offer something to people, but we also take their information and analyze this somehow. So again, from the citizens' perspective, they also have to understand about, like, if they want to get the support from people that are linked to that sector, then obviously they have to have a full awareness how their data has been or will be used by AI technology as well there. So definitely, I mean, these 4 aspects there are very, very essential. And as a part of our plan, we're trying to bring the government as a platform approach to boost uptake of AI in both public sector and wider economy as well. And just to bring it out, a couple of planned activities in order to boost that process. We also have a public e-course to raise awareness of AI, which is free to take to everybody, and along, of course, also creating different kind of sandboxes for testing public sector applications. And we also do that even on an international level. So to share our knowledge and experiences with other countries too, and maybe come up with something that we see that has been working in one country, and just trying to test it also in Estonia.
Thank you, Annette. And for the next question, I'd like to keep the mic with you for now. And the question has to do with, we've spent some time talking about successful AI governance, and we talked about the factors that drive the success of AI governance. What's interesting is nowadays in the mainstream media and in the popular press, we notice two things. We notice all of the technological breakthroughs that AI is achieving. We hear about superhuman performance in translation and superhuman performance in image recognition and so on and so forth. But we also very often read horror stories about privacy breaches caused by AI, or AI used in ways that it was not supposed to be used, or lots of bias, as Anna mentioned. So Annette, in your professional experience, what are some of the pitfalls that should be aware of and certainly should be mitigated when it comes to the governance of AI?
Well, as I said many times before already, that we have to be clear how different countries are using this technology. I'm not going to name any to be just politically correct here, but we have seen many differences again. And we should avoid people having like misunderstanding when it comes to the use of AI. I've seen even too many movies about analyzing the use cases of AI, and when I'm thinking about this and would say like, okay, I mean, if I would just watch this kind of movie, that would just completely have a negative attitude regarding use of AI, but making comparisons with some countries that really do not respect the privacy of people, and maybe are not taking the best positive approach there, then we have to communicate this message to people. How do we do these things here? So if I would just like talk about the pitfalls here, then definitely, I know you're all tired of hearing me saying this already thousands of times, but again, just the literacy and awareness of the use of AI, and testing and just making everybody to understand about what's the actual background there, and we have to understand about that. Of course, this is our information and so on, but how does the government guarantee that our information is safe in their hands, and this is all done in a very secure manner way.
Thank you very much, Annette. So Leila, the same question to you. I mean, certainly the UNDP as a part of the UN family is a very well-respected organization, institution when it comes to governance, not just of AI, but across the board. What are some of the things when it comes specifically to AI, data science, machine learning, deep learning, etc., that you are very mindful of and your team is mindful of in the context of pitfalls to avoid, and if you sort of happen to find yourself in that pitfall, to get out of it and to mitigate any harms or harmful effects?
Thank you for the question. And I think actually I mentioned this already, but I would love to go into details here, because as I said, as UNDP, we are working. The main idea is to leave no one behind. Okay, so that means that whenever we develop any project, any program, we think about most vulnerable groups. So with the with machine learning, with AI, it's all the same. So whenever we develop the program, we of course consider most vulnerable groups. So we need to understand that these groups usually don't have access to technology, internet, even internet, and that's why ensuring the access and the opportunity to benefit from what we develop is important. So this is like the general rule, the first thing. Second, as I mentioned, is gender markers, gender sensitivity. This is a big issue indeed. Like when we can see it in translation assistant, in translation assistance, online translation assistance in some applications, when we don't even notice it sometimes, but there are lots of gender biases and stigmas in AI-based applications. So this is very important to avoid this kind of things and to set example for private sector and for anyone else whenever this kind of projects are developed. For instance, according to our data, not more than 30% of women are in STEM, and this is the maximum number. So it could be even less. It depends on the country. So of course, whenever anything, and AI is male-dominated industry. So whenever anything is developed, we need to consider gender sensitivity, because the outputs of the machine learning programs could be also full of biases and stigmas if we don't consider this. And the last thing is, again, cybersecurity and ethics, of course. Again, considering the vulnerability of the groups, it's important. And one more thing is inclusivity. So inclusive innovation is, again, and one of the most trending topics now discussed within the UN system. Innovation needs to be inclusive because we work with people with disabilities, and we need to consider the needs of people of different abilities, actually. So this is a quite wide group. And this is one of the biggest things which are usually missed in the industry. So we are trying to maintain this kind of things in the work we do and to set an example.
Thank you very much, Leila, for that depth. Anna, can you tell us your perspective in terms of the pitfalls and how they can be avoided?
Yeah, sure. First of all, my comment would be that organizations should not take the approach that I do what I can and that's it. Rather, to do what needs to be done. If you don't have someone in the team that you need in the specific project, then you have to get it. If you don't have the specific expertise that you need for the project, you have to consult with other organizations, even if it is nonprofit or other company and so on. So what I have usually seen in the case of working with the companies, that's the case that they basically do what they have with the existing resources and not go beyond that. So this has to be kind of over. And the second thing is that Annette has also mentioned that awareness is a key thing to go forward with that. And awareness followed with the action is a second key thing. So action without awareness is kind of not possible, because if you're not aware of possible problem, then you will not be and you will not embark yourself on doing anything. And probably the third most important thing is to be open to awareness is one thing, and you might be sure that you're aware of some things like bias happening, but there is another thing that that awareness is very often subjective. So you have to be open for other opinions, for other inputs, and also Leila has mentioned that the innovation has to be inclusive. So that's where inclusivity comes into play for me. So it's kind of a step taken forward. The effort of the companies and organizations to be willing to do more than they might be willing to do at the moment. And second is to be aware and to act upon your awareness, and at the same time to be open to other inputs as well.
Thank you very much, Anna. The next question I would like to ask is Leila, and the question has to do with essentially frameworks. So we know that a number of public and private sector organizations, universities, national governments, private sector research institutes and labs, they've proposed these different types of ethical AI frameworks, AI governance frameworks, etc. So Leila, can you start by telling us about which is one framework or maybe more than one framework that you have found to be useful, and if there are any areas which you think it could be further extended or improved, what those would be?
Can you hear me? Because
yes.
I see my connection is not good. Okay. when we are talking about the framework, so basically, yes, this is very important to include all parties into the development of the framework. And lately, we have established here, not us, like in Azerbaijan, it was established like the Post-Industrial Revolution Center. That actually coordinates now the whole work. And what is very important here, and what I like about this cooperation and the approach, is that they try to include all parties that can contribute into the development of the framework. And basically what is going on now is the work which helps us to map and to assess the needs of all fields available, like all key fields. Like whenever we are talking about AI governance, we are not excluding any area. So we are working, we are trying to ensure that all is included, starting from agriculture to SMEs to urban planning and etc. So this is the first one, what I wanted to mention. And again, the change in strategies. So there are no more long-term strategies in our case. So basically we work with, yes, we plan some, we do some overarching long-term planning, but overall our approach is agility and flexibility. So whatever we do, we do for the short period of time, and with this leaning strategy and changing as per need. So basically this is our approach.
Thank you very much, Leila. Annette, I'd like to ask you the same question. Is there a particular framework or multiple frameworks that you would like to highlight that you find to be quite useful?
Well, of course, yes, there is plenty of very good frameworks that have been brought out, but once again, I would turn back in a way that we can only, I could only bring it out like these kind of frameworks that really are compliable with the values that we respect here. So, so that's why I still find the European Union approach when it comes to the AI strategy very relevant, because again, we respect the same values, the GDPR side, and the data protection is in a key element there, and on a most focus, which I really like the most. And when we think about even our own strategy, it has been based on accordingly to the EU AI approach as well, which is again showing that we have the same values. We're starting to take this in an exact same approach as well. And of course also I think it's very important, as the previous speakers also brought it out here, to collaborate with private sector again, if they show the same respect to the same values regarding the data protection. And our current strategy has been also prepared based on these proposals as a plan on how to implement the expert group's recommendations. So when we were thinking about our own strategy, first of all, it has to be compliable with the EU one, and then we also had an extra group of people, both from the private sector, from other governments, from people that had been working in this field for a while, and these expert group recommendations were considered in order to really build the best strategy in order to use the AI on the governmental level as well here. And as I very briefly mentioned in the beginning as well, that we currently work together with the Finnish government, because again, there is a lot of similarities when we think about the general approach to how do we offer our e-governmental services, and there is a lot of Estonians living here and Finnish people like the Estonians living in Finland and the Finnish people living here. So we want to offer them the same based on services as well, and that's why we try to see how AI solutions could also work on a cross-border level. But definitely, yes, there is plenty of great strategies currently on a table, but we just have to find the similarities when it comes to, again, the very basic values that we represent here.
Thank you, Annette. That's excellent. And Anna, I heard you mention in a previous answer that you've looked at a few frameworks. You found that there was areas for improvement. So now you're actually working on a framework as well that you'll publish quite soon. Can you tell us a little bit about what your framework looks like? Can you give us a sneak preview? And what was it that you found that was a bit lacking in some of the other frameworks that motivated you to introduce your own framework?
Yeah, basically the sneak peek into the framework is AI governance framework. Even though probably on a corporate level there is very few frameworks out there, because I saw people were approaching like from technology companies, people were approaching on LinkedIn asking if I know the company that they have AI governance framework, and then so that's one of the reasons I actually started working on a framework itself. I was already doing that work, the job without a framework, so it was one of kind of the inspiration to start working on that, because I saw already there is people asking for that, and there is a kind of the gap on the market. And second thing probably was that even though there is a lot of frameworks, and Annette has also mentioned, the European Union has quite a good approach to AI governance, but that's once again, European Union is basically working on the regulatory level rather than giving some tools and frameworks or the guidance to the companies themselves to use something for implementation in the company itself. So that's where exactly I thought to fill the existing gap. And this is not only the thing. Another thing is that I think, like, once again, there is always kind of different approaches. There has been a lot of guidelines produced from different countries, different organizations, and there has been very few matches between these guidelines. So then I have also kind of compiled these understandings from the existing guidelines, went through, and also like it was deriving the best approaches to the AI governance as well. So first of all, the understanding is that not only what to do for the organization, but also how to do it, how to approach it, what is the organizational structure to put in place in order to implement the framework. And it's not something just written in the paper. So the aim is it should not be something that is just written in the paper and just as a guideline, but basically as a tool or guidance towards the implementation process, like all the step-by-step guidance for the company, where it enables already like to put something in practice, which is lacking on the market. That's why actually I have started also last summer a nonprofit organization. The very first event that we had was exactly the focus on the question from what to how to put all these theoretical guidelines that has been produced in the last couple of years, how to put it in practice. And it was called Responsible AI for Data Science. It was like putting together the technology side of AI, AI development, and non-technical side, what I call it simply, and somehow give them the floor to share their views and their best practice examples. And then it is event series actually, and we still have it. We are still running it. We just postponed it this summer session, and that is exactly the first thing. There is a gap on the market for the corporate stage, even though there is a lot of bills, even in the United States, a lot of suggestions for the regulatory side. There is very few tools and frameworks for the corporate level. It's where it is most needed. It's the technology companies that are developing this technology themselves, so they have to have some ready tools already in place to be able to use them already in practice.
Thank you very much, Anna, for that. And for the last question, I'd like to keep the mic with you and just ask the question that we know that just like the technical aspect of AI is evolving very rapidly, every day we see some new breakthrough. We read about some new research paper in natural language understanding or machine vision or robotic process control with reinforcement learning. But at the same time, we do hear on the explainability, interpretability, fairness, debiasing, privacy, etc. All of these aspects of AI, or let's say ethical aspects aspects of AI, also there are a lot of breakthroughs. So with all of these changes happening so quickly, how do you stay up to date? How do you make sure that your knowledge is current and relevant as it relates to AI governance?
Yeah, okay, that's one of the tough questions that I probably in introducing it, I answered partially in the introduction part about myself. So as I said, I am kind of guiding that field from the social science perspective, like non-technical side. But at the same time, as soon as I started to get interested in the topic, I started also to follow the data science courses, online courses. Like I started learning Python and some machine learning programming languages, like from totally scratch. I never wrote a code or something. So basically, that is what I always underline with the panel discussions or just with the companies, is that for both of the sides, like to simply divide usually, like, is this non-technical side of AI and technical side of AI. And then what I usually kind of preach is that both of the sides has to have understanding of the other side. The technical, like the ML developer or data scientist, has to have basic understandings of, for example, psychology or some political ideologies or international affairs and relations, to understand this play between the leading countries that is going on right now in the AI field. Also to understand the basic sources of bias, where it might be emanating from. And also, like, on the non-technical side, the people has to really have understanding how machine learning really works, how, for example, reinforcement learning is really different from the classical machine learning algorithms, and what are real threats or risks for the algorithmic decision making to really take place, because sometimes like there is really this line when AI ethicists, for example, that new role, the emergent new role, that might take like on a kind of ludite level, that the fear of technology might go to like on a very new level. But I think that should not happen, because when you know how what are real risks, then you really are aware of how like you really are aware what might happen with a specific technology without creating unnecessary fear. So that's very important, to find time to actually work on very key questions when you are in the field, like multidisciplinary. It's not only about taking philosophy student or philosophy background or psychology background person in the team, but also to have yourself, each person, understanding from each field, at least very basic, to ask some right questions.
Thank you very much, Anna. And Leila, I'd like to turn to you with the same question, is with the rapid change in the landscape of AI governance from a technical and social perspective, how do you make sure that you and your team are up to date and current?
So basically, as I mentioned in the very beginning, we are, as Accelerator Lab, we are the fast learning network. At the same time, we managed somehow to build a very effective knowledge exchanging mechanism within this all 90 countries, and it really helps a lot. So we have regular weekly global calls where we all participate, and we have the virtual space where we share regularly all the updates related to our work. And this, I would say, helps a lot, and it helps us to understand what's going on in different parts of the world and what kind of trends are coming one part of the world to another. And it really helps us to shape local work and to inject these changes timely. And another thing is that happens not on a global but on a regional level. We also have like functional regular knowledge exchanging sessions, and we also conduct some research work together. Just like, for example, recently we did a research on nature of future of work in cooperation of with 6 countries in Europe, like Azerbaijan, Turkey, Bosnia Herzegovina, Ukraine, Uzbekistan, and Serbia. So basically, this is also the best approach to stay up to date and to shape the work. And in this research that I mentioned, we actually focused on AI a lot because machine learning and AI, of course, are part of the future of work and future skills. And this is how we do. So basically, we are very organized in sharing learning and experiences, and this helps us a lot.
Thank you very much, Leila. And Annette, the same question to you is, how do you make sure that the knowledge base that you're operating from in AI and governance is current and relevant and up to date?
Yeah, maybe from the government perspective here, I would say I would turn the question around a little bit, and I would actually say that not just like to make sure that our technology is up to date, but we have to make sure that our legal backgrounds and strategies are up to date. That's the first thing I would say. So really, if I'm thinking about the governmental side, and as we especially consult the other like ministers, so the decision-making process have to be as fast as technology is changing. So that's something that is absolutely essential. And when we are taking too much time on, again, just consulting and thinking about and going through the entire strategies, if the strategy, just writing out the strategy would take a couple of years, you are already late with this implementation side. So the decision-making process have to be very, very quick one as well. But in order to stay up to date also with technology and know what's happening, and I would say looking for that from the government side, we also again have to collaborate as strong as possible with the private sector, because they are bringing us the latest innovation, I would say. And that's why a very unique thing about the Estonian government as well is that in a prime minister office there is a consulting group of people who are recommending again all the new technologies and so on, so that we would stay up to date with what's happening, because obviously the main attention can only be there, but these people that are actually working in the sector of technology and AI especially, they know what's happening and know about the latest again innovation, so they can bring it up to also the public sector. So if I could just say what's my recommendation from our side, or how we try to do that, is that let's just try to make decisions as fast as possible. Let's make the decision-making process quick and fast and efficient, and always include experience from the private sector.
Thank you very much for that, Annette. And with that, we come to the close of the panel discussion. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I have more questions. There's questions in chat, but time flies when you're having a great conversation, as it always happens. So with that, I'd like to thank, on behalf of the Synthetic Intelligence Forum community, to Leila, to Annette, to Anna, for taking time in their busy schedule to come and share their insights with us. And I'd love to offer to invite you back in a couple of months to share some updates from your side and some new lessons learned. But with that, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you again later. Bye for now.
Thank you.